Hello explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to another exciting and informative video on our YouTube channel. If you are joining us for the first time, we want to thank you for watching. In this episode, I will be diving into the reason why, what Washington got wrong about Niger and also Russia in the greater Sahel region. I will be looking into some specifics in this video. I will dive into more analytical information, draw contrasting narratives with regards to Washington's presence in the Sahel. I will also encourage you to watch this video to the end for clarity and better understanding. So without any much delay, let's just dive straight into it. The ruling junta recently called on American troops to leave the country after a meeting where US officials warned against partnering with Moscow. On March 17, Niger's National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland, known as the CNSP, suspended its military agreement with the United States of America after a visit by senior US officials to the capital Niamey. A CNSP spokesperson said the decision was made after the United States of America's delegation warned the military regimes against partnering with Russia and Iran. Niger, which hosted around 1,000 United States of American troops and a drone base in Agadez, and has been an important partner in Washington's counter-terrorism operations in the region. But relations have deteriorated considerably since July 2023, when Niger's presidential guard removed democratically elected Mohamed Bazoum and installed General Abdurrahman Tiani. If you look at the geopolitics in place, Russian influence looms large in Western discourse on the Sahel and now inform US policy and decision-making in places like Niger. This is a mistake by the United States of America. Outsized focus on Russia misunderstands the scale and scope of Washington's also perspective and Moscow's presence. More importantly, it ignores long-standing partners of governance and also denies the role of Africans in emerging pro-sovereign movement and political blocs. Neither the United States of America or Russia are in a position to force Africans to choose sides. Efforts to do so would only result in rebuke. If you look at what happened to France in the Sahel at the moment, considering Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and also Mali, I think this should go a long way to inform the US that those African nations are beginning to make their own decision in several ways. African governments seek to balance outside powers while retaining ability to work with each. Historically, local elites leverage those often unequal relationships with powerful states to enhance their own domestic positions. In Francophone Africa, the cozy relationship between French officials, companies, and African autocrats came to be known as France-Afrique. Niger had become somewhat of an exception among its peers. However, when it pursued close military ties with the United States, if you look at other aspects, recent years have seen a wave of anti-French sentiments hit the Sahel. Military regimes seeking political legitimacy have helped format anti-French sentiments, but they do not control it. The backing of Paris political poisoners kicking the French military out of Niger was necessary to the CNSP to survive with regards to its own implementation. Neither the United States of America nor Russia have a policy to address the humanitarian issues and economic and security implications of France's departure from the Sahel, which explains in part the focus on ideological narratives. However, those countries along the Sahel are beginning to pick themselves up in different ways to also shape their own part in making their own choices with regards to their own political future and shaping their security in the region. Without a clear strategy, Russian responds opportunistically to events on the ground. And while Moscow has enjoyed more success than America in exporting security to Africa recently, it lacks comparable experience and capabilities in the humanitarian field. We understand everything through African Corp, a Russian security expert in the region. Based on our own analysis, we can strengthen it, expand it, and also redirect it. There are now some aspect of soft power. You are Matekros and also Black Kaiska based on his own thinking. But now we need to do serious things, and also that requires a lot of time, money, and people. based on the Russian experts' own perspective on the region. Even though Washington historically ceded policy priorities in Francophone Africa to France, anti-French sentiment did not carry over to anti-American sentiment in Niger. Close military relations and leadership in the humanitarian field still carried weight. It appears that the United States of America's delegation visit to Niamey in March, led by Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs Molly Fee and AFRICOM Commander General Michael Langley, did a significant damage. According to experts in the region, that noted that the reportedly unilateral announcement of the United States of America's delegation's visit and the relatively low rank of visiting officials may have played a part in regards to that particular relationship deteriorating further. The subject of the talks, Niger turns towards Russia and Iran, appears to have been equally insulting. Ironically, the United States of America's delegation attempt to counter Russia's influence in Niger has further pushed the CNSP to seek its ties with Russia. The United States of America's focus on Russia misses the reality that Africans, not Russia, or Americans, are driving major political shifts in the Sahel. The formation of the Alliance of Sahelian States, known as the AES, for example, was a project initiated by Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea and Niger, first and foremost to counteract the military threat from the regional bloc known as ECOWAS. That Russia welcomed the development does not mean Moscow inspired it. If you look at issues regards to that broader Sahel region, indeed, the overthrow of Bazoum was an unexpected issue regards to Moscow's perspective, as it was in Washington as well. The coup was a surprise with no obvious advantage, a Russian diplomat in the region admitted based on our research. Western media were still quick to divine a Russian hand. Implicit was the belief that Russian influence thrives in instability and can spill across the border. This is the perspective that most African leaders and experts think Africans cannot make their own decision. However, the African people are beginning to pick themselves together and making some strategic decisions which could be interpreted differently. Such troops, however, fail to counter and account for a basic building blocks of politics, personal relationship. Russia's arrival in Mali was not a product of informative warfare. It was a result of collaboration between Russian advisors in Mali and Malian military officers who trained in Russia, the history of which goes back to the Soviet era. Malians, not Russians, cleared the way politically, working to secure the buy-in of trade unions and other power brokers in Bamako. If you look at the strategic options in the region, there is no equivalent history in neighboring Niger. The United States of America has the monopoly on relations with Niger's Officers Corps. If you look at that, Moscow doesn't have an embassy in Niamey, lacking strong proven connections. Russian diplomats and security officials feel they don't have a good read on the junta. Moreover, Russian officials have little gush over the mood within the border Nigerian military. Pressure to break with the US, a high-ranking Nigerian military officer's art, comes from within, not from Russia, he warned. Sensing worriness on both sides, the CNSP has tried to attract, rather than unsuccessfully thus far, the Kremlin attention. When the CNSP delegation visited Moscow in January, they couldn't land a meeting with Vladimir Putin or even Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Lavrov. Still, Niamey was among the first countries to congratulate Putin on his elections most recently. If you look at strategic option, the saga of Niger's reflection as a strange transition phase between Washington's war on terror and great power competition, the strategic rivalry between the United States of America, China, and also Russia, in which geopolitical foes find themselves on the same side against. If you look at those issues, the Kremlin views and frames its intervention in the Sahel counterterrorism terms, a fact likely to continue. This resonates far better with Sahelian leaders than geopolitical rivals. If the United States, does not participate in the fight against terrorism, then why are they here? The Nigerian officials asked, based on our analytical research, to track and contain the Russian. This is not their business. We respect Americans, we need their help. But this does not mean that we are ready to listen to reproach and also accusations from incompetent people. based on that analyst's perspective. Some time has passed now since the United States of America's delegation visit and also denunciation of Niger's military agreement with the United States of America, and it appears that the initial tension from the Nigerian authorities' categorically statement has subsided. There is still a chance that the denunciation was a strong-arm tactic to correct and also direct Washington into a dialogue. At the same time, the AES continues to gather steam, with a chart now expressing interest in joining that particular bloc. Niger is an integral part of this new alliance and is closer to the United States of America further from Russia compared to Mali and Burkina Faso. If the United States of America loses a foot in the alliance, which is very possible, it will be the result of an effort to force Africans to choose sides. In the long run, if the United States of America and Russia wish to continue fighting Islamist militants in the Sahel, they will need to find a way to, if not cooperate, at least the conflict and also accommodate for each other's presence. If not, they will both find themselves on the other side looking into leaving those particular country. Hopefully we've informed you regards to the reason why Washington got it wrong and the interpretation that everything that happens across the continent of Africa in terms of leadership and the geopolitical strategic option is being driven by Russia or China is absolutely wrong. Most Western experts still don't see Africa as a continent where it has its own leverage, can make its own decision. We want to thank you for watching. If you are new to this channel, we encourage you to watch some of our informative video on this YouTube channel. We are looking forward to meeting you soon and keep the conversation going. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
U.S. media reports say Washington has agreed to withdraw troops from Niger. The base in the West African country has been key in counterterrorism efforts in the Sahel region, but Niger's ruling junta canceled a military cooperation agreement with Washington last month and demanded the troop withdrawal. Protests against the U.S. presence have taken place since a military coup last July. The U.S. currently has around 1,000 soldiers in Niger. Let's cross over to Isio Erich in Berlin. He is a journalist who specializes in the Sahel region. Isio, it's nice to have you here. Why has the U.S. government agreed to withdraw its soldiers from Niger?
I think the question leads to the core of the problem. After all, Niger is a sovereign state, so why wouldn't they? I think the US learned a lot from the events surrounding the retreat of French soldiers from Niger. The French government didn't want to leave, and in the end they were pretty much forced out, and all ties between Niger and France have been cut ever since, at least for the moment. The US don't want that to happen, so they try to maintain a relationship somehow.
Meanwhile, Niger is getting closer and closer to Moscow. What led to Niger's closer ties with Russia?
I think it's a lot about sovereignty. The coup d'etat is seen in a big part of the population as a move towards a liberation from a corrupt political system in Niger and also from oppression by foreign powers. So the idea of sovereignty is very high in the popularity, and liberating themselves from having one partner only, in that case the West, is seen as a means of gaining more leverage in the construction of a new world order, with Niger in a better place in it.
I'm curious about your perspective on this. Will the U.S. withdrawal affect its ability to wield influence in Niger?
Absolutely. There are more than 1,000 soldiers stationed in Niger at the moment, and it's a very important asset. And once they're gone, it will be very difficult to have an idea what's going on in the region, and that definitely makes a different situation for the US and its ability to stay in contact with the junta as well, because there will be less personnel, and the balance of assets will shift, because there will be Russians in place at the moment, and nobody knows for how long they will stay. So there are a lot of open questions concerning that.
So give us some perspective here. How has Niger's recent political shift affected its relationship with its former Western allies, for example, France? And what alliances has it formed with other countries other than Russia?
At the moment, I wouldn't say that Niger has created new alliances. It's trying to maneuver itself into a situation where it's not siding with either side in a multipolar world. And that is seen as a means to gain more leverage, as I said. There have been discussions, that is said at least, with Iran about the uranium exploitation in Niger. China is raising its influence in Niger, and Turkish politics as well. So there are discussions with many sides, but at the moment the goal of the government of Niger, or the junta, the military government, is to not side with anyone indefinitely. They also say that the Russian military advisors that just arrived in the country, they will leave as soon as their job is done. But if that really happens, is something that has to be seen in the future.
And we're going to have to end it there. Our thanks to journalist Isyo Erich.